A very good morning and warm welcome to all the students and other viewers of our YouTube station. Elsevier welcomes you all to a live Google Hangout on the topic of last minute preparation tips for AIPGME 2015 with one of the most prominent names in the field of medical PG preparation, Dr. Mudit Khanna. It's a privilege to have Dr. Mudit Khanna among us today, and I would encourage all the students to actively participate in the discussion and come forward with any queries that they have. Students can post their queries on our Facebook page www.facebook.com/elzeverindia, and Dr. Mudit will take those questions at the end of this session. Let me now give a brief introduction of Dr. Mudit Khanna. Dr. Mudit stands out as one of the most innovative writers of the modern era, whose strategic ideology changed the way all students aspiring for a position in AIPGME have prepared for their exams over the past decade. Dr. Mudit has been prompt to recognize the significant change and set out to plan a unique and innovative approach to counter the recent changes and challenges that help aspiring medical students emerge as smart winners. Dr. Mudit is currently working as consultant in orthopedics and trauma department in Wokhard Hospital, Mumbai. Formerly, he has worked as Asia Pacific Fellow, Cleveland Clinic, Ohio, USA, and Senior Clinical Fellow, Queen Elizabeth Hospital, UK. Dr. Mudit Khanna is the author of a new online PG entrance examination and simulation tool, mypgme.com, which has exemplary features such as fully customizable tests, bookmarking, performance tracking, simulated mock tests, and many more, thus making MyPGME an ideal partner for your exam preparation. MyPGME is available at mypgme.com, Flipkart, and all leading retail stores. Now, I would like to request Dr. Mudit to speak on last-minute preparation tips in this changing scenario of online examination.
Thank you very much. A very, very good morning to all the viewers, the audience, all the students who have joined us for this particular Google Hangout session. Thank you very much for coming here today. I would also like to thank Reed and Xavier for giving me this wonderful opportunity of interacting with all of you today. Right now, a lot has changed in the last couple of years in the way All India exam has been conducted. And we will talk about all the questions that you have posted online. I have made a list of those questions and I'll be trying to sort of address each one of them that has been asked to sort of help clear the doubts that you might be having in your mind. Having said that, whether the exam is called NEET, it is called DNB, it is called NBE, it is called AIMS, it is called All India, the basic preparation for all would always remain the same. It is only the fine-tuning that changes based on the particular exam conducting body and based on the particular exam that you're giving. Now, I will start off taking the very, very first question, which is very, very relevant in today's context. So the question is, 1 month to go for the AIPGME exam, how should I prepare? Okay, so 1 month for the exam, how should I prepare, to be honest, is probably not a very correct question, because 1 month down the line for the exam, this is the time to revise and revise and revise. This is not the time to prepare. I would strongly recommend that none of you sorts of starts venturing out into a lot of new details which you will not be able to retain for the exam. Revision is the key here. So coming back to the question, let us reframe the question. 1 month to go for the AIPGME exam. How do I revise? Now what I have done is I've thought about it, and I'm extremely sorry, that's my fault. I've reframed the question into how we best revise this particular thing, and therefore I've come up with 2 sets of revision protocols. So the first strategy to revise would be a subject-wise revision. So a subject-wise revision where you start off with every subject, anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, medicine, etc., etc., etc. But 30 days, 16 to 20 subjects to revise would leave you on an average with about 2-3 days to revise a big subject and probably a day to revise a small subject. Now, this particular revision strategy is extremely important to give you the confidence that you have revised the complete subject in detail. The other approach to revision is the mixed or the jumbled revision approach, where you talk about revising in a paper-based format, where you talk about bombarding yourself with questions, one coming from anatomy, the next one from biochemistry, the next one from SPM, the next one from medicine and surgery, so that you can sort of focus and learn to sort of adapt to questions from one subject to the other that are brought in front of you. Now, the subject-wise revision will give you a sense of confidence, the feeling that you have revised it in a more appropriate way. But unless you take the jumbled or the mixed approach, you will find it extremely difficult to face the questions in the exam. So the important part now becomes for you to set a timetable for yourself where you divide the number of hours you have for study into two sections. One where you will revise the subject, and one segment where you would revise the paper-based or the jumbled approach. Now, I would recommend that if you have about 2-3 hours a day reserved for doing the jumbled or the mixed approach, and whatever is remaining, depending on how long you have to study, maybe 5 hours or 6 hours a day, that is what you have to revise your subject. The timetable is extremely important here because the timetable works to your advantage in two ways. One, it will ensure that you are revising all your subjects. Second, it is a kind of a red flag sign to tell you that you're probably not proceeding exactly the way you should be in case you're overshooting your time limits. So make sure if you have allotted 2 days or 3 days to a subject, you finish that subject in 2 days or 3 days. If you are overshooting those 2 days or 3 days that you have allotted, you will not be able to revise the subject completely. Now, once you have this timetable set, the other question we move on to the most important sort of feedback message for this particular question is have two strategies, one subject-wise strategy and one mixed jumbled revision strategy. Divide your time, make a timetable. So that's the key, or that's the essence for this one. Now, the next question that I have is, should we revise from individual subject-wise guides or from DNB or DNB guides, All India guides, AIMS guides? Now, the answer is very, very clear if we go back to the first strategy. So individual subject-wise guides work for strategy one, which is they work for the strategy where you're trying to revise the subject as a whole. While the paper-wise format, which is the DNB or the All India or the AIMS guides, are for your jumbled or mixed approach. So these are to be done in the 2 to 3 hours that you have allotted for them, and the 5 or 6 hours that you've allotted for your subject wise is where those need to go. Now the options that you have for the subject wise revision essentially is either textbooks or your coaching notes or your own notes or the subject wise MCQ books. Now what is important here is that you will not be able to revise either one of them if you have not already funneled your big books into small books. Now, this is what was to be done in the last 6 to 8 months when you were actually doing them NT grade. So what you were supposed to be doing at that time is you were supposed to be striking out or striking off whatever you felt was either too difficult, too complex to remember, or too irrelevant. And you needed to select the high yield topics from these textbooks, coaching notes, or subject-wise MCQ books and funneling them down. So what I mean in that sense is if you have a subject-wise MCQ book which has about 4,000 questions or 5,000 questions, you should have by now struck off 2,500, 3,000, 3,500 questions out of them, and left yourself with about 1,000, 1,500 questions for each subject, with the most important explanations to them. If you chose the textbooks for your integrate preparation, then you should have highlighted what you need to read in every topic and just go through the highlighted text. If you have your coaching notes, then again you would have sort of made a comprehensive package out of the coaching notes to suit your revision strategy. If you haven't done any of these, a subject-wise approach might prove to be too difficult at this stage. Here I would recommend, in case you haven't funneled down your MCQ books, subject-wise MCQ books, and if you haven't funneled down your textbooks or your notes, then probably you should devote or dedicate most of your time to the jumbled approach. Keep giving paper-wise sort of approach. Take the paper-wise approach, and whatever you feel is extremely important, whatever you feel is getting repeated again and again, you need to then come back to whatever reference you want to adapt, whether a textbook or your notes or your subject-wise MCQ books, to read only that particular topic. Otherwise, it will not be possible for you to revise what you already know. And remember that it is not humanly possible to revise everything. And this is not just for you, it is for everyone who's giving the exam. Now, for the mixed jumbled approach here, one thing that we've already discussed is the All India book 10 years papers, the AIMS 10 years papers, and the DNB 10 years papers. You could reduce them to 5 years each, depending on the time you have. The other important sort of approach towards the jumbled or the mixed approach, of mock tests that are available. The third thing is the computer-based testing platforms, which give you the option of giving mock tests on the computer. Now, now that is again a choice that you will have to make, which is the strategy you want to adapt. But the 2 to 3 hours that you've given to your jumbled approach is where you need to do all of these. Coming back, if you haven't really funneled down your subject-wise approach, probably you should dedicate all the hours that you have to these three ways of sort of revising your content. Okay. Now, it is also important that when you're doing your revision, do not focus on lengthy explanations. The idea at this time, with so less time remaining, is that you browse through the question, you get to the answer, only read explanations where the explanation is offering you an answer to a number of questions. So only the very high yield explanations should be read at this stage. Otherwise, long explanations have to be discarded. Irrelevant explanations have to be discarded, and you need to move on to the next question. Okay. Now, the next question that I have in front of me, as asked by some of you, is what to revise in each individual subject, and what to be skipped while revision. I guess I have almost answered this question already in the previous two questions that I have addressed. It's important that you identify topics and explanations that are very time consuming. So those are the ones that you have to leave out. It is important to identify topics that are not high yield, which have been probably asked just once or twice, are extremely complicated tables, for example, which you know you're going to take a long time to sort of revise and remember or retain. So something that you cannot retain, something which is complex and you cannot retain, don't try and retain it now. You have lots to retain, which is simple and easy. So try and retain what is simple, try and retain what is easy. So once again, identify and skip topics that are either too complex to remember or too time consuming to revise. The next question that quite a few of you have asked is how much time I should devote to study. So now this is a question where you talk about the number of hours that you need to study. Okay, I strongly believe that you have to study for a reasonable number of hours. It's very difficult to give it a figure. Realistically, I think if you are giving about 8 hours a day for your study, that is very, very reasonable. However, it's about not how many hours you give to study, but it is more important about what you study in the numbers of hours that you are giving for your study. So it's essentially the difference between hard work and smart work. So somebody could be studying 14 hours a day, but maybe studying things which are not so relevant, which are not so high yield, that will probably not give him the kind of results that he's looking for. On the other hand, somebody might be studying just 8 hours a day or 6 hours a day and maybe focusing exactly on the high yield focus areas, and then he is in a much better position when he goes for the exam. So study hard, study reasonably hard. Don't overburden yourself by the number of hours that you worked. Make sure that your strategy is correct, make sure that your approach is correct, and make sure that you study smart towards your goals and towards your objectives. There was one of the blogs that I was reading, and I really liked what was written there. And the line was, don't swim deep, try to swim far. So the essence is, don't try to be a master of one subject, try and be a jack of all trades. Read little, but read everything. You need to make sure that you accumulate superficial knowledge of a wide area of subjects rather than deep knowledge of one subject. You might then be able to answer questions which are very complex in that one subject, but leave out a number of other easy questions from other subjects. That will not help your rank, that will not help your cause. Let's come on to the next question then. The next question that I have been asked is, will questions repeat? Now, there's a lot of anxiety amongst people saying that the number of repeats have gone down. To be honest, questions will always repeat. But with the changing scenario, with the fact that the exam has gone online, the database of the number of questions that are asked every year has gone significantly up. So while earlier we had 300 questions in an all India exam, so over 10 years we had a sort of bank of about 3,000 questions. Now we have 300 questions in one session, and let's assume that there are 2 sessions a day spanning over 10 days. So you're talking about 6,000 questions here in a single year. If we assume that all papers will not have mutually exclusive questions and there will be some questions that will be mixed up in the formats, even then we're talking about reasonably about 3,000 questions a year. Now, if 30% of questions are repeated every year, and if that number has stayed the same, then we are talking about 30% of 300, which was very, very easy to remember earlier. Now we're talking about 30% of 3,000, which is a huge sort of database to study from. And that is only 1 year. Further, the other problem obviously is the fact that we now have a non-disclosure agreement by NBE, which everybody has to respect and should respect, which also means that the questions that we believe are from NBE may not actually be true. So we actually do not know, none of us know what were the actual questions that were asked in the exam. So the approach to the exam now is more holistic. The approach to the exam is now more knowledge based. The approach to the exam is now different from what it used to be in general. We'll get on with the next question, which is basically what all of you have always wondered, and this is, what is the general pattern of the exam and how has it changed in the way you need to prepare? Okay, probably we could have taken this question right at the beginning. Having said that, there are two major changes that have happened in the exam in the last couple of years. The first major change is the fact that the exam has gone online. So it has changed from a paper-based examining platform to a computer-based platform, which means that you need to sit in front of a computer and answer the exam. This gives us a very, very strong and very clear message that the way you need to prepare for the exam should also have some element of computer-based preparation. Now, I would sort of make it simpler and say that you can still continue preparing the way that you have been preparing. Excuse me. However, the way you need to test yourself should be computer based for a reasonable amount of time. So you need to familiarize yourself with the way you are going to be giving the exam. You need to be comfortable sitting in front of a computer for 3 hours at a stretch. You need to be comfortable answering those 300 questions in front of the computer with one question appearing on the screen the way it is in the exam. So do spend, and I strongly recommend, do spend a significant degree of time when you're giving your mock tests to be doing these kind of mock tests on a computer-based platform. A computer-based platform that mimics the way the exam is being conducted is an ideal platform to practice. One such platform is MyPGME. However, there are other platforms that are available. You're more than welcome to choose any one that you like, but make sure that you do dedicate time to sort of familiarize yourself with the computer-based testing platform and try and give more and more mock tests on the computer-based pattern. The second thing that has changed, most importantly, is the fact that the examining body that conducts the All India exam has changed. So rather than AIMS conducting the exam, it is now NVE conducting the exam. With this change, honestly enough, the question bank has significantly changed. Now, what it tells us very, very clearly in terms of the message is that the earlier trend of preparation, where you would just do 10 years of All India papers and 10 years of AIMS papers and would go in the exam with a lot of confidence, does not exist anymore. I do stress that 10 years of All India and 10 years of AIMS do remain extremely important, but they are not now the only way to go ahead. If you prepare only 10 years of All India and 10 years of AIMS, your preparation would be deficient, and that would not be enough. What you need to add to this as a minimum is obviously 5 to 10 years of DNB or NB questions, so that your basic or baseline question bank is set. Further, it has become extremely difficult to update these new questions or the new themes that are being increasingly asked during NBE. So you need to understand that more and more of these new themes will be incorporated in a lot of mock tests that are being conducted online, because as and when we get access to the themes that have been asked and the themes that we feel are important, we do try and incorporate those themes into the mock tests that are being sort of floated around. Okay, now the next question is, now what should be the most important things in days just before the exam? So now what we're talking about is you only have a week left for your exam. What do you do? Now there's not much you can do a week before the exam. If you have readied yourself with content in the form of notes, which you have specifically earmarked to be revised during the last week, which could be important figures, which could be important notes, which could be important things that you tend to forget, which could be important things that you always feel that you need to remember. If you have compiled them in the form of notes or in the form of certain pages, in the form of certain text, that is what you need to revise in the last 1 week. If you have not done this particular step, then you are best sticking to the mock tests, the jumbled sort of question answer format, and referring back to the textbook or the reference book or the subject wise book or whatever book you've sort of highlighted, and read just the relevant stuff pertaining to that particular question and move on. Okay. Uh, Now, the next question we have is, what are the few most important things on the day of the exam? Well, what is most important on the day of the exam is that you need to be calm, you need to be patient. Um, Sorry. Um, you need to believe in yourself, and you need to stay positive all the time. So visit your test center, if possible, a day before the exam. If you cannot visit it, make sure that whoever is driving you or taking you down to the test center knows exactly where it is, so that you have a clear idea in terms of how much time you're going to be taking to reach the test center, and there's no anxious moments right before the exam. You don't want anything like that to happen. Make sure all your documents that you need to take to the test center are all ready, all assigned. Those on the last day, these are more important things than you trying to revise one topic or the other which you feel has been left behind. Have a good night's sleep, stay positive and focused, believe in yourself. Make sure you read all questions very carefully, especially the ones which come with an except or with a not, because you want to be sure that you don't commit any silly mistakes on that day. Every question is extremely important. What will hurt you the most is if you commit a silly mistake and you come back and say, oh, I read the question incorrectly. So make sure you give the time it takes to read a question and then move on to answer. You need to remember that it is not the most difficult questions that will that will ensure that you don't get a rank. You will lose out on a rank if you answer easy and relevant questions incorrectly. Trust me, you will not lose out on a rank by answering a very difficult or complex question correctly. So your target has to be very, very straight, very, very clear. You need to tell yourself, I want to make sure that I am able to answer all easy questions correctly. If you can adapt that approach, if you can make sure that you answer all relevant questions, which you feel are relevant, which you feel are not haywire, which you feel is like extremely difficult, nobody would have been able to answer them. If you don't answer those questions, just forget about them. Nobody is going to be able to answer those questions, or the few people who are going to be able to answer those questions are not going to influence your rank significantly. But if you answer questions that are easy, that you feel are easy, and if you answer them incorrectly, then I'm sure your rank is going to go down. So make sure that you stick to the basic principle of answering simple, relevant questions, the ones that are relevant in your view, correctly. The other question that has been asked to me is, do we leave any questions in the exam? And if we do leave, then which ones? See, now all of us know that this exam does not have negative marking. Now there may be a slight debate in sort of the marking in the way the exam is going to score you. So what we're talking about is that if two people have the same score, then the person who has marked less number of incorrect questions gets a higher rank compared to you. Now, I would be of the opinion that even if it was negative marking in the ratio of 1:4, like it used to be in the older times, I would have still asked you or insisted that you attempt a larger number of questions. So, for this particular exam, in my opinion, you should attempt all questions. There's no negative marking. Give yourself a chance. Attempt all questions. Don't worry about marking one question incorrect and losing out on a rank. The likelihood of you scoring higher if you mark it correctly is always going to be higher. So answer all questions. I think these are the questions that I have in front of me. I think there has been some problem and I'm not getting any of the questions that you might have been posted online. Um, I wish I had a few questions. One of the questions that has been asked and that you've been asking, a lot of people have been asking me is when the new edition of the AIPGME book is going to be coming out. So, right in front of you, let me be very honest. The AIPGME book is not going to be coming out this year before your exam. Um, I will make certainly attempts to sort of get it floating sometime in the next year. For this year, what we have done is we have incorporated all the recent questions into the mock tests that are available in my PGME so that you can get a feel of the way the exam is going to happen and you're able to sort of get that this is about this question that everybody has been asking me. I think all the other questions that you might have posted on Facebook, I will sort of get back to them, have a look at them. We might arrange another Google Hangout session where we are able to answer those and take it forward from there. Um, I am available. I'm to answer all your questions. I would like to wish each and every one of you all the very best for your exams. I am sure each one of you has the ability to qualify and crack the exam. There is no difference between each one of us. Everybody has the capability to qualify, and so do you. Keep the faith in yourself. All the very, very best for your exam. Thank you very much.